Kevin KAYR Robinson, a real estate operator, author, and two-time USA Today best-selling author of Can't Break Me. Kelvin grew up in deep poverty in West Philadelphia and moved more than 18 times before adulthood. KR experienced instability and loss early in life, but instead of allowing those circumstances to define his future, he developed the discipline and systems that eventually helped him build lasting ownership. Today, he manages more than 160 workforce housing units and speaks about resilience, discipline, execution, financial independence, and the realities of building wealth when you don't start with wealth. KR, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on your platform. I'm looking forward to having this conversation.
Okay, so KR, you moved more than 18 times before adulthood. Why and what did that instability taught you about security, ownership, and control?
Well, growing up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and my mother raised seven children on welfare, removed 18 times before I turned 18. So I got used to living without electricity, without heat, and without a margin of safety. Two things I really learned early on that I still apply today in my life. One is that I can't control my environment, but I can control how I respond to things and also my environment. Number two is moving around constantly taught me how to read people and situations quickly. And so I apply these two principles in my business every day.
All right. So, yeah, growing up in deep poverty, what lessons did you learn about money that still influence how you build wealth today?
One thing I didn't notice growing up was that I was surrounded by people who had big hearts and really cared about me, and they can feed my belly and feed my soul, but they weren't very disciplined. And so I talk about this in my book, Can't Break Me, where I embrace the three D's: desire, discipline, determination. Desire is it's what gets you up every day, gets you fired up, and you want more out of life. But desire alone doesn't get results. And then you have discipline. Discipline is when you adopt routines and you actually do what you say you're going to do. And then determination, that's what carries you through when you face setbacks. So I think growing up, learning that key principle, the three D's, it helped me understand what is important. I went out and got mentors and sponsors to teach me about discipline and money management and things of that nature. So I started to understand delayed gratification. You don't have to spend all your money today, let it grow. I started learning about compound interest. I started learning about the principles of saving money and financial literacy. So those are things that really helped shape me. Once I shifted my mindset, I started to get exposed to key principles, financial lessons and principles that I apply to my life today.
All right. So, I'm just wondering, for someone who has lived in extreme poverty, I did know some traces of survival modes in your life.
And so in my book, I talk about, and Can't Break Me, I talk about going from survival to structure to stability, financially, mentally, spiritually. And it's so important because we constantly were moving, what have you. I remember one time we lived in a studio apartment where we had a hot plate, no stove, a bathroom sheet, no bathroom door, a bathtub, no shower. And we had 15 people competing for space with rats, roaches, and flies. And it's because I had multiple siblings that dropped out of school and got pregnant as teenagers. And so I think that growing up like that, I started to understand one thing I'll never forget. I remember early on realizing something, and that was if I continue down the same path as everyone around me, I knew how my story would end. And I decided that I didn't want my story to end that way. And so that was some of the experiences I had growing up in abject poverty. It had forced me to really think through things. Do I want to be like this for the rest of my life? And my stepdad in the book, his name is Father Charles, he said, don't be an F up like everybody in our family, including himself. He said, do as I say, not as I do.
All right. Thank you so much. So, you emphasize discipline execution other than motivation. What does discipline execution actually look like day to day?
I'm glad you mentioned that because motivation fades and discipline stays. And so discipline, you basically, it's the moment when no one else is clapping, when no one else is watching. It's when you're putting in the work, when sometimes you're just alone. So discipline can be boring, but it's the necessary things that you have to do in order to get to the next level. And so discipline for me is making sure I wake up on time, go to bed at a decent hour, make sure I'm taking care of my personal health, make sure that I'm executing my assignments on time and building those relationships. So discipline requires you to really adopt systems and best practices so that you can get to the next level. Unlike motivation, it's driven by how I feel today or how someone else made me feel. And so that's how I think about discipline. It's like, what can I do? 3 to 4 things that I have to get done every day, no matter what, how I feel, that is going to help me get 1% better every day.
All right. So tell us about your experience. You experienced significant personal loss and setbacks. What allows you to keep executing when life hits you hard? Because most people, when they get to a point where they experience loss and setbacks, example like myself, it has been very, very. I will not say difficult. I will say I'm still on my way of finding my feedback.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I called my book Can't Break Me. That's the title. Because when I went off to Bowdoin College on a scholarship, my brother, 1 year my junior, went off to prison. He was sentenced 12 to 20 years for attempted murder. And as of writing this book, he's back in the system. By the time I turned 29 years old, I lost 2 siblings to the streets and health and my biological parents and both sets of my grandparents. So I tell people they have to stay unbreakable. What I did is I created my own personal board of directors, which comprise of mentors and sponsors who actually willing to help me figure out, along with my family. My family can feed my soul and my belly, but I got mentors and sponsors, which comprise of like therapists, counselors, ministers, friends, teachers, nurses, and all these other folks to help me figure out, how do I deal with grief? How do I deal with survivor guilt? How do I deal with identity? How do I become disciplined? How do I graduate from high school, from college, become a successful businessman? And so I think that every time when I'm going through something, I remember something that is so important. I think your listeners should know is that you go to work for a paycheck, you go to school for an education, and you go to your loved ones for happiness and joy. I'm going to say that one more time. You go to school for an education, you go to work for a paycheck, and you go to your loved ones for happiness and joy. And don't ever mix them up and you'll be okay. So that's how I deal with so much loss.
All right. So, Kia, how do you evaluate whether a real estate opportunity is actually worth pursuing?
Think you had asked, how do I evaluate real estate opportunities? Is that your question?
Yes, how do you evaluate them and know that they are actually worth pursuing?
Well, what I do is I'm glad you mentioned that, is the way I evaluate my real estate opportunities. And we do this in a very systematic way. I do a macro analysis. So I want to pay attention. What are the laws for that country, for that state? Are they landlord friendly? That mean that can I enforce my lease to make sure that the tenant's not taking advantage of me? Are there rent controls? Also, how easy is it to evict a tenant? I'm looking at also job trends. I'm looking for population trends. That's the macro analysis. Then I do a micro analysis where I look at the individual zip code, maybe 3 zip codes in that state, and I want to pay attention to some of the trends. What are the amenities in the neighborhood? Do majority of the people own the houses? Are they homeowners? I'm looking for things like that. And then I'm doing analysis based on the numbers. I want to get at least a 10% cash on cash return after I pay for everything. If I invested 50,000 into this property, at least I want to get 5,000 a year after everything is done. So I'm looking at those type of things when I'm thinking about if an investment makes sense. I'm looking at it from a macro level and then a micro level. And I'm looking at soft stuff and I'm also looking at hard stuff. So it's a combination of art and science.
All right. So, talking about your memoir, Can't Break Me, what does that phrase mean to you today compared with when you first wrote it?
I think that phrase, what it really means to me is that no matter what the world throw at you, you have to keep coming out the corner swinging. And so I always stress there are 3 things or 3 people that you have to beat every day. One, you have to beat yourself. And what I mean by that is that you're going to self sabotage. You're going to set yourself up sometimes before you even get out the house, you're setting yourself up for failure just by yourself self-sabotaging. The other thing you're going to do is you have to beat self-doubt, because sometimes you're going to doubt yourself. So I want you to definitely don't let doubt scare you from taking advantage of an opportunity. So one is self-doubt. The other one is beat the system. So say for instance, I was a liberal arts major. I wanted to get in the finance industry. So I had to convince the system and everybody that I was qualified, that I belong in this finance industry. So you want to beat the system. The other thing is that you want to beat your opponent. There are some people out there trying to knock you out, and you cannot be naive. So again, I would say beat yourself, beat the system, and beat your opponent.
Okay, so you have been recognized alongside socialist Elijah Anderson at Yale. What did that experience mean to you, given where you started from?
I think it was an amazing experience. Professor Elijah Anderson was my mentor when I was 14 years old. It's a full circle moment where I was a young, talented person with very little direction. And now I'm able to share the stage with distinguished Yale University Professor Anderson, and also speak at a conference and talk about my book, Can't Break Me. So it is a once in a lifetime opportunity to be able to convey the importance of a sense of a community. I'm not self-made, I'm community made. My community invested in me. They poured into me. They helped me become who I am today. So I think this acknowledgement and this opportunity and this accomplishment is not just for me, it's for all those people that believed in me and loved and prayed for me. So I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak at such a distinguished university.
Okay, so Kia, are you financially free?
Yes, I am financially free, and I'm blessed and very happy, because I did what I always stress is that I did what was necessary, then I did what was possible, and I found myself doing the impossible. So in 2009, I owned one rental unit. By 2018, I had nine rental units. By 2019, 35 rental units. By 2020, 105 rental units. And now I'm at 160 plus, because I did what was necessary, then I did what was possible. And then I was able to find myself doing the impossible, because I believed and also implemented delayed gratification. I benefited from saving my cash flows from my rental properties. I was able to pay down debt. And then I was able to leave my full time job because I generated enough money to cover my personal expenses, also my insurance, and also enough money on the side to help family members out. So I'm very, very blessed to be able to decide how every day goes for me. So I'm very, very blessed.
Okay, so let's talk about how social media portrays financial freedom as luxury cars, passive income, and unlimited wealth. So, what do you have to say about how social media portrays financial freedom?
That is a great question. I actually do not ascribe to that idea that financial freedom mean that you can get jewelry and get fancy cars and all these different things that are material wise. Not for me. Financial freedom mean that I make enough money every month that I can cover all of my expenses and also some of the things I enjoy to do for fun, but also have enough money to donate to nonprofits, also have enough money to help loved ones and friends and communities that I care about. So it's not about being excessive or about being showy. It's about being in a position that you can create opportunities for yourself and others without having to clock into a 9 to 5 job. It gives me the flexibility to decide, do I want to serve on a nonprofit board and not worry about going to work, or be able to help my loved ones without going to a 9 to 5 job. So that's how I think of financial freedom. I think sometimes on social media, they want to say, financial freedom is like success, is like speed. I do not believe that. You have to put your time in, and over time, when it's your time, you'll be able to benefit and enjoy it to the highest degree. But I do not think that you got to be flashy or you can get there overnight. I've been a real estate investor for over 17 years. I think things done well are done soon enough.
Okay, so for someone starting with very limited resources, what is the realistic first step towards building long term ownership?
Well, what I really think that is so important when you have very limited resources and you want to build financial, you want to achieve financial independence, you want to build wealth. The first thing is that you have to become vulnerable. And what I mean by that is you got to be willing to admit that you don't know all the answers, that you need other people's help, and that you're trying to become the best person that you can be. And so that's what I initially did as I became vulnerable. And then I embraced the 3 Ds: desire, discipline, determination. And then they need to embrace the 3 C's: intellectual capital, whether you're learning in the classroom or outside the classroom. Social capital, you're building relationships so you can affect change in your life and others. And financial capital, how does capital work? How do you get money? How do you get assets? How do you grow those assets? How do you maintain those assets? How do you budget? How do you start a business? So I think you get those three. You get the three C's and the three D's. And what's going to happen is that you want to get to the three R's, which is you build a track record and you build relationships. So therefore, the third R is reputation. Your reputation will precede you. And it's so important that you get the three D's, three C's, and three R's down so that you can achieve and build real wealth. And it's so important that you understand that the riches are in the niches. So don't try to be everything to everybody or try to know every subject. What I want you to do is really zero in on something that interests you and work extremely hard and extremely smart so that you can stand out and start building wealth. Understand the importance of delayed gratification, compound interest. You want to put yourself in a position to win. So you first start off with those three D's, three C's, and three R's.
All right. So there are some habits that keep people financially stuck, even when they have opportunities around them, habits and mindsets. What are those habits, and how can we identify when start creeping in on us?
So I think I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of us get stuck because we're back to what I was mentioning earlier, where you got to beat three things. Where you have to beat yourself. So sometimes what's happening is that you're self sabotaging. You're setting yourself up for failure before you even get out the gates. You're finding reasons on why you will not be successful. And then the other thing is that you're counting you're basically self-doubting yourself. Everything you think you want to do, you keep telling yourself, you weren't meant to do this. You're not meant to be great. You're not meant to live a better life. You have to destroy that negative mindset and the negative talk and replace it with positive talk and a growth-oriented mindset. And then after you do that, you got to go back to what I was saying earlier, where you have to be practical. Figure out what gaps do you have in terms of your education, in terms of your toolkit, so you can become successful, so you can go to the next level. And make sure you put together your personal board of directors, and also make sure that you actually get in nurturing environments where people believe in you and encourage you and open doors for you. And the other thing is you want to do is make sure you have a good set of friends. The people you surround yourself with will have a big impact on who you become. And so I think those are some of the steps you can take in order to get unstuck, in order to achieve something great.
Okay. So finally, from your memoir, Can't Break Me, what is one message you wish every listener or every reader would take away from it?
The number one thing I want you to take away from it is not where you start, it is where you finish. And once you come to the realization that if you want your life to change, it's going to be because you changed. The way you think, the way you walk, the way you move, it's so important. And in order to do something that you have never done before, you have to become someone that you've never been. So I'm going to repeat that. In order to do something that you've never done, you have to become someone you've never been. And that is why I really want people to remember. It's not where you start, it's where you finish. Your past may explain who you are, but your past does not get to define your future.
All right. Thank you so much, KR. Thank you for joining us today. The story is a powerful reminder that where you start doesn't have to determine where you finish. From moving 18 times as a child to building more than 160 housing units, you have shown that resilience becomes especially powerful when it's paired with discipline, execution, and ownership. For those who would like to know more about your story, Can't Break Me, and get your memoir and connect with you, how can they do that?
If you would like to reach me, you can contact me on Instagram, on all social media at KAYR Motivates. That's KAYR Motivates. That's KAYR Motivates. KAYR Motivates on all social media. And my website is kayrmotivates.com. Please, if you're ready to level up and look at the world very differently and take your life to the next level, please check out Can't Break Me.
Okay, thank you so much. And make sure to check out Can Break Me, my audience. And if this episode is speaking to you, share it with someone out there who might need to hear this. I'll see you guys on the next episode. I love you guys so much. Thank you, KR. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for having me. Have a great one.
You too.